welcome to Conversations here on NTA Network. Now you know what Conversations is all about. We talk about issues that affect you and me. My name is Nike. I have some fantastic guests in the studio with me, and they'll be introducing themselves today.
My name is Dr. Sylvia Tagbo Keke. I have a son who is on the autism spectrum.
Okay, welcome to the Conversations room.
Thank you.
My name is Oluwadamilola Alaudi. I'm a registered behavior technician as well as a qualified autism service practitioner supervisor. I work with individuals on the autism spectrum disorder, and I've been doing that for 8 years now.
8 years, wow.
Yes.
Okay, so they've kind of let the cat out of the bag. Today we'll be focusing on the autism spectrum disorder, managing children, coping as families, everything under that umbrella. So we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back after this.
The word autism, also known as autism spectrum disorder, is common to a lot of us.
It is often linked to people with repetitive interests, restricted behavioral patterns, and other social or communication impediments. Though ASD symptoms may appear earlier or later in life, they commonly become evident during early childhood between ages 12 and 24 months. The diagnosis of ASD is usually a detailed and rigorous process involving chains of medical experts. The exact cause of ASD is unknown. The most current research illustrates no single cause. Suspected risk factors for ASD include having an immediate family member who is autistic, certain genetic mutations, being born to older parents, low birth weight, metabolic imbalances, exposure to heavy metals and environmental toxins, and many more.
Because it is common amongst boys, autism spectrum disorder is often called a boy's disease.
However, it does not mean that ASD does not occur in girls. It simply presents differently in girls and women. In comparison to recent decades, ASD is now being tested earlier and more often. This leads to higher reported rates in both boys and girls. There is no cure for ASD. Rather, for some autistic people, support, specific therapies, and considerations can help them feel better or alleviate certain symptoms. Families who have autistic loved ones may be concerned about what life with ASD may look for them as an adult. Some autistic adults go on to live or work independently. Others may require continued aid or support throughout their lives. Each autistic person is different. Autism is a spectrum disorder that does not respect any culture, color, or religion. However, some cultures still perceive autistic victims as witches and so ostracize them. But records have shown that they are people with special creative talents. All they need is a vent.
I know I can. You wanna be. If I don't have it, I'll be where I wanna be.
How then can we help bring out the creativity and productivity of people with autism while helping them enjoy every bit of the world? Let's find out from our guests in the studio.
Welcome back to the Conversations room, and we're talking about individuals living on the autism spectrum disorder. Thankfully, we have an expert. So, Damilola, I'm going to be throwing quite a number of questions at you.
That's okay.
How do I know that I have a child, for instance, that's on the spectrum?
Okay. It presents itself in 3 domains: the communication skills, social interaction skills, and then in some behaviors.
Right.
So communication, you would expect that typically your child will look at you because that's where communication starts. It's by giving eye contact and the likes.
Right.
So if your child is not able to look at you as early as 3 months, to be precise, then that's a red flag.
Right.
Also, they're supposed to be able to smile back because even though they don't have words at this stage, but they can recognize your presence and smile back at you. If those is not happening, then you want to start watching out for these. If they're also not raising up their hands to be carried. These are typical things that toddlers do. But if you're not seeing it happen, then you should start watching for this. Even if some people scale through, you will discover they want to be by themselves sometimes. They don't want to interact with people. They don't want to be found in the midst of others. Or they are unnecessarily feeling overwhelmed by lights, sounds. Those are things that tells you should get them checked. Then behaviors you see, typically if a child is playing with a car, they would play with the cars or all. But some of these children would rather focus on the wheels of the car. And then you see them going back and forth, you're lying, or they just want to look at the wheels. Or they want to do a particular thing. You're watching the rhymes, for instance, and then they keep going back to a particular part of the rhymes because that's the only thing that interests them in the rhymes. Some of these things are things you look out for in a child with autism.
Okay, so but there are parents watching you right now, like, what she's saying kind of sounds like what my daughter is going through. Where do we go from here? Do I watch for some time before I take the child in? Does it have to be at a certain age before I take my child in for an assessment? Is that what it's called?
Yes, it's an assessment.
Right.
I mean, right now, assessment can be done as early as 18 months.
Really?
Yes. But before then, you would have been tracking milestones. There are different milestones tracker that helps you know what a child is supposed to be doing at a certain age. So you're taking notes of all of these things. And for any child to get diagnosis of autism, they have to have checked something on these three domains: the communication, the social skills, the repetitive. So if you're seeing different things at these places, as soon as they're 18 months, you're advised to take them for an assessment so that they will be able to know if it's autism or it is something else. Because what we preach at Ziba is early intervention, really.
Okay.
The earlier, the better.
Okay. Well, now we have Sylvia here, and you talked about in the introductions that you're a parent. What was the journey like for you at the very beginning? Maybe you want to share a little bit of, because there are parents who are watching and like, oh, she's a parent. She's walking in my shoes. How did you know?
For me, like Damilola said, autism is a spectrum. Some, you can catch it very early. Why some do not present the way everyone thinks it should present. For my own journey, and my journey can be different from every other person's journey. All these milestones from 0 to 12 months and the rest, he met all of them.
Right.
He walked early, he sat down early, he did all that. And he wasn't talking. My son's own was speech. The speech wasn't coming. And because he's a boy, everybody said, oh, boys don't talk early. They can't, relax. Yeah. Boys don't talk early, relax, they can't. And then I said, okay. Until I just knew that no, something wasn't right. Okay.
The speech was the trigger for me. After the speech, the socialization with other children, because when they get older, you expect them to be able to socialize more with other children, and if he or she is not doing that, then you know that something is definitely amiss.
Okay.
And of course, like you said about toys, my son started lining up his toys. He will have cars and he will line them up in a long line.
Okay.
And that is another telltale sign of a child that is on the spectrum.
Okay. So Damilola, I suspect he's on the spectrum. I get the assessment. I get the diagnosis. Where do I go from here?
The next thing is to start therapy programs. What therapy is about is an individual learning plan is put in place for a child, because no two children are the same.
An individual learning plan?
Yes.
Right.
So it will target skills that are deficit in, and then you start working on the skills for them to bring them up to speed. I mean, the rate at which they learn differs from each other, really.
Yes.
And it's not about the curriculum you have to meet up. It is at their own pace. It is when you get it, you get it.
Yes.
It's not if, because we're sure they can learn. All we just have to do is start to teach them in the way that they learn best.
Right.
How you teach one child is definitely different from how you will teach the other. So a program is developed, which is the individual learning plan. You start working on the program, and then gradually take them up.
Okay. I know that there are some children, some individuals who are on the spectrum that they practice self-injurious behavior.
Yeah.
I've heard of people who have seizures, epilepsy, things like that, and they're listening to you, Damilola. What would you say to them? How do they handle this kind of challenge?
Okay, so for people who engage in self-injurious behavior, what we have found over time is that it's lack of the ability to communicate their views, their thoughts.
Right.
So we believe in giving them a functional way to communicate rather than engaging in self-injurious behavior. I mean, if I'm sad right now or I'm anxious, if I can tell you that I'm anxious and then you help me, I wouldn't engage in self-injurious behavior. What has happened over time is it is the self-injurious behavior that has gotten them the attention that they need. And everybody's running everywhere. Why are you doing? So it gets them what they want. That's why they engage in it. If you give them an alternative way to tell you exactly what they want and then they'll get it, it will reduce the level at which they engage in self-injurious behaviors. But for children who have seizures, there are comorbidities. I mean, autism associated with something else.
Okay.
I believe that over time, parents would have understood the triggers. If my child is in a room with bright light and I know that is aversive to them, it lets them get into this zone that they don't want, then we'll try to take them out of it and gradually introduce it till they can tolerate it. Some people, there's a loud noise.
Right.
The loud noise could trigger seizures and the likes. So if I already know that this happens with my child, I mean, I'm not saying you will know right away, but over time, you'll be able to take note of what's happening.
Okay.
And because of this, you'll be able to back off from what is aversive to them.
Sylvia, I mean, you've lived in the Nigerian society. You've spoken with, I'm sure, other Nigerian parents who have kids on the spectrum. There is this call, especially like maybe the age-old theories, grandma theories. That's what I'll say of disciplining the child in order to get the child to behave or to be more socially acceptable. What are your thoughts on that?
For children on the spectrum, they can't help the way they act. Yeah. But as a parent, you should be able to know when he's just being naughty or when it's the autism. I know at times it's hard. Yeah. Like my son, I tell when he's doing some things and I say, okay, my other children, this is just being naughty now.
Right.
And however I treat my other children, I have 4 kids, I give him the same treatment.
Okay.
So that he's not thinking I'm different, I can do and undo and yeah. So as a mom, I have to really, really be emotionally and mentally in tune with my son to know when this is autism. I really need to show love and care and try to help him out. And then, he's just being a child and he's being naughty, and I really need to tell him, hey, this is not acceptable. Yes.
Okay, Dr. Sylvia, I'm familiar with even some of your work. I know that sometimes you would find one parent who's accepted the diagnosis and another parent who is in complete denial. How do you handle that?
As a parent, nobody wants that diagnosis.
Yeah.
Nobody wants you to tell them my son is on the spectrum. And for those parents that are in denial, I empathize with them. I know how they feel. I know where they are coming from. They don't want to face reality.
Yeah.
But my advice to them is the earlier you do, the better for your child.
Okay.
I know how they feel. The fear can be crippling, sincerely. You spend night crying, asking, what did I do? What happened?
Yeah.
Did I do something wrong? Was there something I did that made this happen? But for those parents, I just tell them, you really need to start therapy. Like Damilola said, early intervention is the key. And for parents that already have accepted it, they should continue. They should not give up on their child. Mm-hmm. For autism, at times it's like 100 steps backward and 1 step forward. But you just have to keep at it.
Okay.
And never stop.
Damilola, can a child outgrow autism? Because that's another statement that I find online a lot. He'll outgrow it. She'll outgrow it. Is it true?
It's not true. They don't outgrow autism. It's a lifelong issue. Yes, they learn ways to cope. They learn ways to manage their behaviors. I think that's what people see, and they say, oh, maybe he has outgrown. What has happened is over time, they have learned the skills that is needed to acclimatize in a certain situation that used to be overwhelming, or to tell you how they feel, which they wouldn't do before. And people then start to say, oh, this child has outgrown. There's nothing like outgrowing. What happens is you learn, and then you start putting to use every skills that you've learned.
So pretty much a lot of work has to go into it, and it's not just the work of the parents, right? It takes a village to take care of a child or an individual, because we do have adults. I mean, maybe we're focusing on the children a bit too much, but we have individuals who actually are on the spectrum. And I know even in my family, I had an aunt that didn't really go out. She was but now that I'm grown up, I have a better idea of what the challenges were. She never went out, she never socialized with any one of us, but I now know, I'm better informed that she was actually on the spectrum. So, but now in today's society, children are on the spectrum, are in mainstream schools, some are in specialized schools, but there's still that stigma. Some parents don't want their kids to mingle with children on the spectrum. I'm sure, Sylvia, you may have been down that road once or twice yourself, so maybe you want to share about it.
That's why my husband and I, we do what we do.
Yeah.
Autism awareness.
Okay.
We talk and talk and talk about autism, because those people, I think, is ignorance, and that's one of the slogans that we use. Autism is not a tragedy, ignorance is.
Yes.
And we try to educate them.
Some people treat autism like it's contagious.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
So you really
It's not a common cold.
It's not a common cold.
Yeah.
So you have to really educate those people. We've had very, very bad experiences, my husband and I, but what we do, we say, we're not going to live forever. So by the time we go and our son is out there in the world, so he will meet all these people. So the onion it's on us to educate those people, to tell them about our son and about other children out there that's like our son, so that they can accept them. Acceptance, inclusion, that's what we preach.
Awesome. Damilola, I understand that diet also plays a huge role in taking care of kids. Maybe you would like to throw some light on diet.
Okay, we've had people go on casein-free, gluten-free foods.
Casein-free?
Yes, they're casein-free foods, gluten-free foods.
Right.
I mean, there's really nothing cast in stone. What works for person A might not work for person B.
Okay.
So in that line, you would have to try your hands on different things and find out which one really works for your children. But I'm sure that food that have high sugar then would increase their hyperactivity.
So it's true if they're on a lot of sugar.
Yes, I mean,
I thought that was all kids though.
Exactly, even neurotypical developing kids. But you know, for them, maybe they're a little bit hyper. You might want to step down on their sugar intake just to reduce their hyperactivity, because hyperactivity would definitely get in the way of their ability to learn. And according to the seminar that we did yesterday at Ziba, the nutritionist that we brought in made mention of something about metabolism. We neurotypical individuals being able to break some things down, and some of them can't, so it stays in. So all of these things, if you work with a professional like a nutritionist, you'll be able to find out what works best for your child and then stick to that. I mean, you should also make sure that they explore different food, because what we have seen over time is parents then stick to a particular kind of food, restrict their children. Let them explore different. Otherwise, you're like buttressing their ability to be restrictive in their nature. So you want to make sure that they're flexible even with their food, and they're getting all the vitamins that they need.
That's also important.
Yes.
It's something you just said, just kind of brought to my memory. There was a video clip that was being passed on social media of a young adult who was maybe at a Kmart or Walmart, it wasn't in a Nigerian setting, throwing down televisions and things like that. There are children that have those kind of episodes. As a parent, Sylvia, when your child is, I don't want to use the word acting out, is having a hard time expressing himself, having an emotional challenge, how do you reach out to them?
In fact, that's a question that most parents would want an answer for. The first thing as a parent is you have to calm yourself down as a parent. take a
First.
deep breath. Yes, you have
Right.
to be calm.
Right.
Because by the time you get agitated, this it's like a sponge. They sponge up and it increases their aggression. You calm down and then you start by calming them down. You start by don't use aggression when they are being aggressive, because
Right.
they become more aggressive.
Right. I'm so glad you said that. Don't use aggression when they're being aggressive.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have to empty your mind. Let them not feel any of your emotion. And then you start.
But as a
talking
Nigerian
to
parent,
them
Sylvia,
gently.
sometimes
You want to slap them.
sometimes you want to act out just as they are acting out.
But that will increase it.
Right.
So you just have to empty your mind.
Okay.
And don't even feel any emotion, any agitation, because they will sponge off it.
Right.
And then they will gradually, and don't expect that calmness to come immediately. You have to gradually talk to them, calm them down, slowly approach them, hold them, and for those that like being touched, you massage them. For those that do not like being touched, if they are kneeling down, get on their level, and then gradually.
Okay. You mentioned having other kids.
That's what works for me.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned having other kids. Have you had to help them to be advocates or helpers to your own child? What was it like, telling them or educating them about your child's condition and how they've been able to help? What's your journey been like?
Right from the onset, I told my children about my son, my two older ones. And then when I had my last child, he's about 5 now, from when he could understand,
Okay.
I keep telling him,
Okay.
your brother is special. He's different, but he's special as well. And he understands that. If you look at a lot of the short videos that we do, Mekaliana talks about Kanye. And if you go out, Mekaliana said, this is my big brother Kanye. Kanye doesn't talk, but I talk.
Oh,
and he
nice.
talks on. Yes, so he understands that. And my 2 older kids, they know they're responsible for Kanye, because I tell them he's vulnerable, so you have to look out for him.
Okay.
And for parents, I have to tell them you have to talk to your older children, because
Right.
these children are very, very vulnerable, so they
Right.
have to be protected.
Okay. Now, there are parents also watching and thinking, okay, what she's saying is awesome, but they have invested so much of their time, their emotions, their energy, their finances into this one child when there are other children. How do they balance out and give as much attention to their other children? Maybe not as much, but also face the other children and what they're also going through. They're growing up, everything, because kids remember these kind of things.
It's a difficult journey, because you always, as a parent, you always put more effort on a child that is more vulnerable than the other children. You can't help it as a parent.
Right.
That attention, because that child needs more help than the other kids. But the only way to do that is to carry them along.
Right.
I'm giving this child more attention because he needs more help. It doesn't stop me from loving you. I love you, but we all need to help him,
Right.
because he needs our help.
Okay.
It's only when you don't carry them along that they feel left out.
Right, right. Okay, so we're talking about individuals and children living on the autism spectrum disorder. I want to ask Dami about parents. We talked about therapy for the children, but something tells me that even parents need a bit of training, therapy, support. Can you tell us a little bit about what a parent needs once the diagnosis comes in?
Okay, first of all, you need to explain to the parents what this means, really. It means that this child will not be able to talk to you exactly the way your other kids can, or will not listen to you when you just say, go and sit down there. I mean, they need to know what to expect. And after telling them what to expect, you also need to tell them what to do when they find themselves in these situations. Because otherwise, we'll be experiencing behavior contrast where we were seeing something at the center, for instance, and it's not happening at home.
Right.
We all have
Okay.
to play as a team. So we tell parents, this is what we're going to be doing, and this is what you should be doing at home. When you're doing this, you're going to see this. When you see this, this is what you should do. And speaking of when she talked about carrying siblings along, and like we also always tell parents to make their older children, for instance, do some of these things with this child, because that way you don't have to do it all by yourself. You have someone as well to help you, and everyone at home has to be on the same page. Because what will happen is, if they discover that they can go free with one person but this other person, then they'll start tilting towards the other person. Then you'll find that, oh, I've been doing this for so long, it's not working. It's because everyone at home is not on the same page. So we at Ziba, we ensure that we conduct parent training like a month, bi-monthly, as the case occasion arises permanently, and then we tell them what to do. We ask them feedback of what they're doing, what they're seeing, give them opportunities to express, and also tell them how best to handle situations that they
Okay, so when we do an assessment and we have that diagnosis, is it something we need to repeat after a couple of years, or is it that one?
No, it's not. It's not one off.
Okay.
Or you can't do twice within a year.
Okay.
Like after a year, you can go for reassessment if the need be. I mean, some people want to go somewhere else, they will do a
get a second opinion.
Yes, or you also want to see how your child is progressing. There has to be a difference in the initial assessment and then the reassessment that you do to the, okay, we have been able to bring them up to this, and then we're still going that way.
Okay. But Damilola, people are watching you and saying, but you're saying therapy. Therapy is expensive. How expensive is it?
I were very expensive.
Very expensive.
Very expensive. And it's very challenging, especially for parents that they have 5-6 children.
Right.
They can't even afford a full square meal a day, and then they have this child on the spectrum, and how do they take care of that child? And it's a challenge. It's a big challenge.
Okay.
And we at Ziba Foundation, we ensure that we also go to schools, for instance, talk to teachers about it, so that if teachers can at least cushion the effects on the class, know some basic things to be able to do for a child who is in the school. I mean, saying if your parents can't afford therapy, but you're sure that your child's teacher in school knows something and can at least do something for your child.
Okay, so as a professional, I know that there are therapists all over. A lot of people carry the name therapist. I need a therapist for my child. What am I looking out for? What questions should I ask my therapist before I engage him or her?
Well, you first of all want to ask them for the kind of training that they've received and where they've gotten this training. We also have bodies that certifies therapists. We have the Behavioral Analysis Certification Board. We have the Qualified Applied Behavioral Analysis. We have International Board for Continuing. Different bodies. You want to find out what they know, where they got the training, because some of these certifications are international, kind of professional. But there are people who get trained here and haven't done the professional exams. You can find out where they got your trainings. You can go online. Then you ask them questions about your child. I mean, when I say about your child, things that you have seen in your child, you can throw the questions to them. See the kind of responses they give you. Then it helps you know if they really know what they're about.
Okay. So is it just one therapy? Because I know that there are different areas of therapy. And maybe Sylvia would like to throw light. I know there's occupational therapy, and there are different things, different interventions.
Therapy, you have speech therapy, you have behavioral therapy, and then you have other therapy that is not really
Play therapy,
music therapy, art therapy, sports
Sounds
therapy.
like a lot of interventions.
A whole lot of interventions.
Okay.
To help the child.
Okay, so as a parent, you need to find what fits or try
what they
try
need.
everything until you see the one that fits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some children I know are very interested in a particular thing. So do you encourage? I love piano, and just encourage that.
Keep encouraging.
Okay.
Because that might be their lifeline.
That might be their lifeline. Okay, awesome.
Well, we'll take a quick break. This is Conversations here on NTA Network. We'll be right back.
Categorically, no. There have been literally thousands of studies in this area, and all of them have found no association between vaccination. Maths. Not every child will repeat back words. Not every child will have difficulty speaking, and not every child will have hand mannerisms. Every child and adult on the autism spectrum is different, full of their own unique talents, personalities, and yes, challenges. The label autism doesn't mean one thing. What it is a gateway to understanding a whole new way of thinking about the world, and those children and adults are to be cherished for that fact.
When there's a child out there that's not getting the same that your own child is getting, the difference will tell, and there will come a time in the society where that child is going to take its pound of flesh.
Where you can actually, everything from watching a program with the child, you can start up the conversation from something on the TV and say, oh, you know.
For me, it's like, hurry up with this business. And the other one said, Auntie, it's not about me, it's about the guys. They're not ready to marry.
Yes. If she wants to ask something, no, I know my mother very well. In fact, the most interesting one is when I put up pictures on WhatsApp, you know, Snapchat filters and all that, she will call me, remove that picture. There was a day I got tired of all that and I said,
We're talking about autism spectrum disorder here in the conversations room. We have Dr. Sylvia, who's a parent, and Damilola, who is a therapist. You can send in your messages, your questions. They're here for you to answer these questions. It's been really awesome just hearing about, autism. People sometimes use that word and, they almost use it almost in a derogatory manner. You know what I'm talking about. And it's very important that we raise awareness. 2nd of April was World Autism Day. Yes.
But the whole of the month,
the whole of the month. A lot of people are using it as the whole of the month. Maybe you want to tell us what the foundation has been up to?
Okay, first off, we've been going to partner schools to sensitize teachers, speak to head of schools and the likes, to tell them because we find out that they have some of these children in their classrooms and they don't know what to do with them or where to send parents to. So we go to schools to sensitize them. We also carry out like teachers and caregivers training. We also had a seminar yesterday where we brought in professionals, qualified behavioral analysts, and nutritionists, just to speak more to people on things that they can do with their children. And we hope that they will go out there, talk to people, spread the word, and even be advocates themselves. That's what we encourage. Speak for that child who can't speak. Speak for that mother or father who doesn't understand what's wrong with their child. And if you see any child, you can always call the attention of the parents to say, I'm noticing this, I'm noticing that you should get this form of assessment and the like. So, and all through this month, we're still going around schools. Here we are at the TV station. We're working with NTA, our media partner, the PhD, Boss FM, Wazobia. We're going everywhere to ensure that this message goes out there.
Okay. Talk to us about genetics. The fact that a woman has a child on the spectrum, does that mean, or is there a higher chance that her next child or the child after that will be on the spectrum?
Well, there are predisposing factors, but...
So it's a possibility?
Yes, but I mean, nobody's able to say that this exactly is why autism is happening or why it occurs. But I mean, people have seen over time that you could have more than one in a family. So I mean, if you have someone who has it in your family, there is a risk of somebody else having it and the likes, but nothing really cast in stone to say, oh yeah, this is it.
Okay. Because some people are like, okay, but are you sure you want to have more kids? You have this child who already has a child, and maybe you should stop here. You shouldn't have any more kids. Things like that. It's a fear.
Yeah.
I mean, and you can't
just have to let go of
you
that
hear all
fear.
sorts of things
Yes.
from your in-laws, from your family members,
Yeah.
like let her stop, or we
It's not like the sickle cell where you can calculate and likes. I mean, you could do everything right and still have, and then you could be as careless as possible and you don't have. So it's really nothing. There is no way you can measure and say, oh, it's going to happen or not going to happen. So yeah.
How do I know if my child needs to be in a specialized school or can cope in a mainstream school? Because I know there are some parents that insist that their children must be in a main school no matter what the challenges are, because they want to see the best. They want to see the full potential of the child.
I'm very sure that if a child who is not able to cope in a mainstream school goes to the mainstream, the attention of the parents will definitely be called. I mean, for instance, if someone who engages in injurious behaviors, either to self or to others, you will definitely know that they're not ready to be in a mainstream school.
Right.
Or a child who is really hyperactive and can't sit still, runs around, a child who makes so much noise, they're not ready to be in a school. Or a child who has short attention span, for instance. We know what the mainstream school setting is like. You have to sit for a number of periods and then the teacher goes on teaching. If the child has short attention span, he or she can't learn. So why be there in the first place?
Okay.
Those are factors that you would see, and then you can tell that this child is not able to fit into the mainstream.
There's something you mentioned about comorbidities, and when you said the child not sitting down, hyperactivity, and ADHD comes to mind. So are you saying that ADHD and autism sometimes work hand in hand?
Yes.
Right.
Sometimes, yes. But a child could be hyperactive. If for you to qualify
and maybe
for ADHD,
you can tell us about ADHD,
okay.
so that
for you to qualify for ADHD diagnosis, we have 3 ways.
Okay.
You have to be impulsive.
Okay.
Hyperactive, and then have short attention span.
Right.
So if you have short attention span, you can't focus. Was saying this, the child is already off. Right? Or hyperactive, some children can't just control. I've seen children who tell you, I mean, I can't help myself. I just find myself fidgeting. I can't sit still. Some would just do things before thinking about it. They have no time to even process whatever it is. After doing it, then they'll realize, oh, I shouldn't have done this, but I wasn't thinking. That's different from autism. Autism, you might not even be able to communicate why you did whatever it is you did. Okay. Children who have ADHD can still socialize. They can still interact with people, and they don't necessarily engage in repetitive or inflexible behaviors. So there is really difference between
we have a question, and I'm going to throw it to Sylvia. It says, good morning, my son doesn't talk to us at home, but whenever he's listening to children's songs on TV, he sings some lines with them. He also counts numbers. What do you think about this? Thank you, Frank.
That's autism, actually.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. There are some children, they don't talk at all, but they sing. They have perfect pitch. They can sing, but when it's time to interact with you, converse with you, they can't. Yeah, it's.
I mean,
like I said, autism is.
I know, and I also like to add that it's reinforcing for them to sing rhymes and the likes.
Okay.
But they don't see the dividend of conversing with you until you teach them that you can also get something out of conversing with me. They might not engage in any conversation.
Okay, so you have to do therapy.
A question came in asking if autism and cerebral palsy are the same.
No, they're not the same.
They're not the same.
Maybe you want to tell us
but they
the
can
differences?
coexist.
Yes.
The child can have both cerebral palsy and autism.
Okay.
But they are two different diagnoses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe even though we're not focusing on cerebral palsy, you can just give us a little insight
cerebral
on what
palsy is a paralysis of a part of the brain, depending on how it affects the child.
Okay.
For some people, they can't move some part of your body, but the other parts can function. For some, they are bedridden. They can't stand up, they can't move that cerebral palsy. So depending on how it affects the child, cerebral palsy is just a paralysis of the brain, depending on the part of the brain that is paralyzed.
Okay. Joshua from Oyo has a question for you, Damilola. He's saying, is there any medication that can remove autism in a child or reduce the impact?
Therapy.
No.
Therapy.
I mean, we've had people do different things like stem cell, these. I mean, like I said again, it works for some people, and for some other people, it doesn't work. It's dependent on the child, so we can't say that there is a medicine that takes away autism. No.
Okay.
I don't know of any that takes away autism. Otherwise, everybody will be.
Believe me.
Heading to the pharmacy or the
yes,
of
yes.
course. Another question on hereditary, but I think we've already spoken about that.
Yes.
Let me see if we have it. Okay. So would you say, someone is saying, is it a genetic disorder or a mental disorder? Maybe you want to tell us about
It's
that.
more of a mental disorder. Remember, it's neurodevelopmental disorder. So it's something that
you're a psychologist as well, am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's something about the brain. It's not genetic is your genes, your chromosomes and everything, but autism, it's a mental disorder. It's something that affects the way your brain processes information. It's not like it's not processing, but it's processing it differently.
Different way.
And then it's giving the output in different ways than we are used to.
Okay.
So it's nothing genetics, it's more of a mental disorder.
Let's talk about socially accepted words. You can't say a victim.
No.
You say an individual living with autism. So not a victim.
No.
No, they are not a victim.
And I personally don't like when you say an autistic child.
Okay.
Because they were first children. They are still children. Autistic child doesn't come out right with me.
Okay, so what should we say?
So you can say a child who is on the autism spectrum,
on the autism
or
spectrum,
affected by autism, impacted by autism.
Right. Okay, that's more socially accepted. No, because we need to know these things, and it's a national TV show. It's good for this information to go out there because people use so many words. I don't want to use them on national TV. That is wrong. But victim is not the word, and I think individuals living with affected by. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sylvia, we're rounding off on time, but I would like you to speak to the parents out there watching you and saying, this woman she's living my life. She's living my life, and I haven't even started. I don't even know who to talk to. Where do they start from?
First of all, you start from your home. Like my husband and I. If your child is not accepted within your family, then the point of it being accepted out there.
I'm glad you said that.
So you start from your home. It takes a village. Not only you and your husband,
the children.
Everybody, the children, cousins, grandma, grandpa, get them involved. Everybody must be involved. And then before you go out there and tell your child, tell other people about your child. And then of course, early intervention.
Okay.
Early intervention. So I have 3 things. Early intervention, inclusion, acceptance. Those 3 things, they are very key for the child.
Okay, so in the villages, sometimes when this kind of challenge comes and it's obvious that the child is on the spectrum, the mother gets blamed. You know, they will say, maybe it's some sin from her past or some family sin, things like that. The awareness is still not.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, in the towns, okay, but in the villages, that stigma of, well, it must be something, or it's the woman's fault. We all know what we mean by it's the woman's fault or the family's fault and everything. What do you say to people like that who still have that mindset about it being a family thing, a family problem? Let's leave them to them.
You have to talk to them. You have to educate them. And then you have to tell them about children that are on the spectrum that are doing well. You have to tell them that this is not a death and this is not it's a lifelong condition, that these children have special abilities in them, and you as a parent, you need to find that ability. You need to work on your child so that they can be able to live a good life in the society.
Someone is asking, good morning, it's a pleasure to be on this program with you all. What causes autism? I don't think we actually spoke about causes, even though it was in the program. What causes autism?
There are no known causes.
No, nobody knows.
Researches are ongoing, but nobody has been able to say that
no one knows.
This is what causes autism. So we can't put anything to the
cause.
So
we can't throw the blame on anyone or
no
anything.
one actually. No
if
one.
it's happened, it's happened.
Yes.
It's good to just face it and handle it squarely. Okay, awesome. Let me see. I have another one saying, Thanks for enlightening people about autism. What is the solution when my child seems to have memory loss? My child usually has memory loss from Aria.
For memory loss, it's not memory loss. It's just the way you have to keep doing it over and over and over again until it becomes part of that.
It takes a lot of patience.
It takes a
being
lot of
parent.
patience. So it's not. What she's saying is memory. It's not really memory loss. It's just learning disability. So she really needs to keep. If you are teaching 1 + 1, if a normal child can learn that in 2 days, it might take 3, 4, 5 months, or even a year for a child on the spectrum that has learning disability to learn that. So you have to keep teaching the child in love and with patience.
And this is a question that stands out to me. They said, what if the child is under nobody's care? What if the child is an orphan with no one in particular, no parent to take care of the child? So maybe you might want to speak to...
That's heartbreaking. Like JKS Orphanage for Special Needs Children in Abuja. They take in such children, and that's why privately funded, and that's why we came up with a portal, the CARS Autism Society portal, where we onboarded these children, and well-meaning Nigerians, anybody from all over the world can go on this portal and pick a child and pay for therapy for that child. Yeah, that's if you go to that orphanage, they are in Kubwa, there's really a huge need there.
Thank you.
There was a child that was almost strangulated and abandoned. This orphanage home took that child
in.
Yes.
And different societies have different names. In my own side of Nigeria, they call them Emiri. That's what people say. They say Emiri or Banje. They're different derogatory words, in my opinion, that are used. And we just need to break that cycle of using those kind of terms.
Bad stigma.
Yes.
I would also like to speak to someone who talked about the child having memory loss.
Yes.
It's like when you learn to drive and you don't drive eventually, you might forget names. So if you have skills that you're not putting to use, then there's every tendency that you don't remember the skills. So these children, some of them learn these things, but they are not really putting it to use. If you learn 1 + 1 and you have not actually been able to put 1 and 1 thing together to make 2, you might not know the next time someone asks you 1 + 1. So any skills that they are taught, they need to apply it in real life situations for them to keep it in there.
Some people use the word imbecile and autism. Is that the same thing, and is imbecile a socially acceptable word?
It's a terrible word.
It's not.
Yeah,
it's
a
not
terrible word. And
people use it. I've seen people on the pulpit.
Yes.
On the pulpit use that word.
It's a terrible word to use for anybody. Anybody, any human being. And it's heartbreaking when parents with children on the spectrum, or they have children that have cerebral palsy, or they have children that have brain disorder. It's very heartbreaking for the parents to see another person call their child an imbecile. That word should be taken out of the dictionary.
It should be stricken out of the dictionary. Damilola, would you like to speak on the use of the word, and just how people need to be more sensitive to families who have individuals
I
on the
believe
spectrum?
By the reason of this awareness creation, it will help people to know better. I feel like if they know better, they wouldn't say that. It's nothing to call anyone's child. I'm very sure people who use the words would not like that their own children be called. So, I mean, if you know about something, you would not misjudge or misinterpret whatever it is, which is why we're doing what we're doing, ensuring that people know what conditions exist, because these conditions do exist among us. And then when you see it, you will know better how to empathize, how to help, how to show love.
Okay, on that note, we'll be drawing the curtain on today's edition of Conversations. I want to warmly thank Dr. Sylvia Tagbo-Keke for joining us, a parent who is doing great things all over for her son and for individuals living on the spectrum. Damilola, we appreciate you and the work that you're doing with the foundation. It's been awesome and an honor to meet you both. This is Conversations here on NTA Network. Thank you for joining us, and see you again soon. Goodbye.
Bye.